sold my car to buy dope, and I've never done that to enter a marathon. You asking yourself, how is this behavior serving me? Balance is so freaking overrated. Nobody's coming to save you. I began to learn what it was like to choose suffering, to do hard things on purpose, and to get the lessons from that suffering. Words said to us by a stranger in passing can change the entire course of your life. My beginning, I'm sure the earth shook that day. Probably not in a good way. So, things for me were pretty interesting right from the start. I had an 18-year-old mom who really had no clue about being a mother, and very early on my dad left, and so he was gone really when I was a year old. I didn't see him for about 6 years, and during those years in North Carolina, my mom began this process of equipping me to be a survivor. In fact, that was the language she used. You're going to be a survivor. And I think it was just her understanding right away that I was going to need those tools as a survivor to get through this life. It was the 60s. It was the late 60s. So there's a lot of Bob Dylan and Janis Joplin going on my stereo at the house. And my mom was a theater person. She was still in college at University of North Carolina. And so our house was filled with strangers and friends pretty much every night. There was a lot of tie-dye. I got to tell you that too. There's a lot of tie-dye going on, and parties at the house. And, I grew up in an adult world. I was an only child. And so I learned very early on that I was going to have to find a way to make friends and sort of find my way. And I think that's when I put the mask on, super early. It's not that I wasn't being myself, but I didn't know who I was. So I began to be the person that I wanted to see reflected in other people. At that early age, I couldn't put words to it that way, but that was when I think I began this path down towards addiction, honestly, because during those years, I learned very early in elementary school that it was easier to achieve and to get recognition for that than to make bad grades or not have good attendance. But what I knew was, my mom, if I wanted to play a sport, soccer was the very first thing I ever played as like a 9-year-old. And my mom kept telling me to go put my costume on, for practice. I'm like, it's not a costume, Mom. It's a uniform. And just her sort of lack of understanding of sports was something that I felt like I needed that in my life. And so I moved to California in with my father, and all of a sudden I'm playing 6 sports, like everything. Every sport I could play in every season. I ran cross country and played football at the same time. I played basketball and wrestled at the same time. I ran track and played baseball at the same time. And I actually did those things all the way through high school, except for wrestling. I quit that. Growing up with a mother who was very much a free thinker was pretty frustrating, because I could ask my mother a very direct question. For example, and in today's age, this is pretty poignant. Like, who would you vote for president, Mom? And now I know, easily I can tell who she would have voted for. But her answer, even at that time, was always, well, some people believe this and some people believe that. So in high school, I end up playing all the sports. I make good grades. I am the class president in my junior and sophomore year. And then in my senior year, I become the first white student body president of a very big, predominantly black high school in North Carolina. And it was phenomenal. That's my mother's dream. My mom and the civil rights and gay rights activist for her entire life. So, I kind of become that guy in high school. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to fit in. I go to Carolina as a 17-year-old freshman, and I'm halfway expecting there to be a banner on the dorm that says, welcome Charlie. Like, we're so happy you're here. Like, our college life can begin. And it took about a week, I think, for me to wake up one morning and be like, wow, I am incredibly average. There's 4,000 other freshmen at this university who have the same credentials that I have. And very quickly, I discovered my talent. And I was first team All-American as a drinker. And I could just simply drink more than anyone else from day one in college, period. And it was the college drinking age at that point was 18 years old in North Carolina. Yay for me. And so I began to distinguish myself as a top tier drinker. And at that point, a fun guy, right? I was the life of the party because, things were still new and early, and it took a while before things got messy. So I got to Carolina thinking that I was special, and ultimately what I figured out pretty quickly is that I was very average. There were a lot of other people there with the same credentials, and on one hand, you would think that took some pressure off in a way, and I guess it did, but I also lacked identity to such a degree at that point. I'd grown up this only child, sort of fitting in with adult groups, that without the identity I had in high school of being the athlete or the smart kid or the, whatever it might be, without that, I was lost. And drinking not only allowed me a door to social life in college, the way it does for so many people, but it also brought out this other part of my really gregarious personality. And drinking was it was magic. It was just magic for a little while until it wasn't. Drinking in college became not just something I did every day, but it became something that people sought me out for, which sounds crazy, but I got invited to this party and that party, and it was fun. And then somewhere around my sophomore year, it was how can I drink even more? And so I joined a fraternity because that was absolutely going to help my academic career. And it did not. And that's when I was introduced to cocaine, which was the next iteration of this growth cycle for me. And, I tried cocaine the very first time. This is in my book, and small amount. And I was actually relieved. I didn't feel anything. And I was relieved because I thought to myself, I was worried this was really going to screw up my drinking. And seriously, the second time I tried it, it's like a super bright sun went off inside my head, inside my brain, and I could literally use those rays through my eyeballs, and I saw everything. I saw my future. I was gonna cure cancer and make up with my dad and make good grades and be the guy that I always wanted to be, because cocaine had that power for 10 or 15 minutes at a time until you then had to re-up and do it again. And this cycle began for me that didn't end for 10 straight years. So I joke with my first wife that she forced me by getting pregnant. So all of a sudden we're having a baby. And of course, what decent human being dad doesn't want to be there for, his son or daughter? And that was going to be the catalyst. So at 29 years old, my son is born, and he doesn't know it, but he's literally going to be my savior. I mean, that's how I'm viewing this. It's a lot of pressure for a little kid, but I'm holding this tiny baby, and I'm literally feeling love for a human and from a human that I didn't think I was entitled to or capable of, because I had just never felt it before. I'd been a pretender for so many years at this point, and I knew that I wanted to be a good dad. And for a couple of months, I was dad of the year, right? Even though little babies don't necessarily want their dads as much as they want their moms. But 2 months into his life, nothing happened. But I found myself driving to the worst neighborhood in town, where I spent 6 days smoking crack and drinking and basically just destroying everything, all the trust and love and everything else I'd built over the short period of time of his life. And that binge ended with me handcuffed on the ground. The police are searching my car, which has 3 bullet holes in the back of it, which, were put there by somebody shooting at me during, a drug deal, a buy on a random street corner. And this was not unusual. I don't know why they were shooting at me. I know that I either took their drugs and drove away because I couldn't pay for it, or they just realized that I had a bigger wad of cash and they wanted it. I mean, that was just the nature of being on the street. And I traveled a lot, so I had this, I bought dope in every big city in the country for about 10 years. So it was not an uncommon experience, but that one ended predictably with the police going through my car. And I remember watching this policeman. He's digging through the back seat and he's throwing out bottles and cans and all kinds of crap. And there's a big, burn hole in my driver's seat, probably from a crack pipe. And I see this cop reach under the driver's seat and he digs around and he pulls out this little glass pipe. I can see it so clearly. And he gives me this look, sort of a condemning look, and shakes his head. And any remotely rational, sane person in that moment would have been thinking, this is bad. This is going to be bad. I'm going to jail. This is going to really mess everything up. And he's holding this, and all I can think is, so that's where that was. And if he had handed me that crack pipe in that moment and a lighter, I would have just done the deal. I was so sick. I was so out of it, a lack of understanding of my situation, that I couldn't even see that I might actually be in trouble. And that's when I knew I needed to make a change. And honestly, it did hit me like a little bit of a bolt of lightning. I'm not a religious person particularly, so there was no burning bush. My car might have been on fire. But in that moment, all I could think was this one simple idea: nobody's coming to save you. So after that incident, I made a commitment that I was going to go to an AA meeting that very night. And I went to probably my 500th AA meeting at that point, but the first one that I ever went to because I wanted to hear what somebody else had to say. Before then, I'd gone to a ton of AA meetings to get people off my back. That's why I went, was to make other people happy, not because I was looking for a new path. So I went to a meeting. I got up the next morning and I went for a run, probably 2 miles. I think I puked in the bushes, in the bathtub when I got back home. It was awful. But I made a commitment on that day that I was going to do those 2 things for 30 days and just see what happens. So I went to a meeting every single day for 30 straight days, and I went for a run every day for 30 days. And not surprisingly, my life got a lot better. And so I committed to 90 days after that. And once again, things got incredibly better. And then I didn't put a number on it. And for 3 straight years, I went for a run every day and I went to a meeting every day, and my life changed. Those first 3 years of sobriety, I ran every single day without missing a day for 3 years. Because my life depended on it. That's how I felt. I felt like running was saving my life. But I also figured out very early on that I loved individual things. I loved running. Running, you're on a team, but nobody can run for you. Nobody can feel that pain for you. Nobody can take that pain from you. And I think without knowing it, even early on in my running life, I recognized the association with digging deeply as an athlete and, getting to that moment where I wanted to quit and then finding a way to get beyond it. And I think that's what we do in life. Quite frankly, all the time. That's the crux of almost everything, is we get to these moments and then we have to find a way past them. I learned early on in my very first cross-country race that most people go out too fast, including me. And halfway through this 3-mile race, I'm literally dying. I can't feel my hands or my feet. I'm numb and totally, out of oxygen and struggling. And I recognized the familiarity in a way of that feeling, and I actually loved it. I loved the feeling of being empty and recognizing that I got the chance to push through this hard moment. And, I made it to the finish line, and I had a good race, and it was this kind of cathartic moment where I was like, oh, that's what this is. Like, this is available to me anytime. I can put my shoes on and I can go for a run, and I can tap into this physical suffering that brings about an emotional response anytime. I don't have to be anything for anybody else in that moment. I began to learn what it was like to choose suffering, to do hard things on purpose, and to get the lessons from that suffering began to change my life. One of the things I learned during those years of like running every single day is that I could control my personal suffering. And what I mean by that is I could tap into physical pain really quickly. Like, there's kind of nothing out there better than running to tap into that physical pain. And I recognized early on that I probably needed a therapist. But I also recognized that I was really good at sort of self-punishment is the best way to put it. And this was a complicated dance because part of me was just so energized and in love with running. Like, it's cultural exploration. I'd show up to a marathon and there's thousands of people around me. But what I did decide at that point is I want to see how far I can go. And I started to run races of 50 miles and 100 miles. And I ran across the Gobi Desert. I ran across the Atacama Desert in Chile. I ran across the Amazon jungle, and I climbed mountains. And for a brief time, I became probably one of the top ultra distance runners in the world. My joke was always there's only like 5 of us, so it wasn't that hard. But that's actually not true. There were plenty of us, and it was fun to be really good at something. So I was doing a race in the Amazon jungle, and of course, because that's where all the best ideas come from. And this guy, who I never met before, blurted out this idea. He's like, have you ever thought about running across the Sahara Desert? Because nobody's ever done that before. And I like to say that words said to us by a stranger in passing can change the entire course of your life. And that's actually what happened in this moment. So I actually told him it's the dumbest idea I'd ever heard, and you'd have to be a complete idiot to even think about running across the Sahara. So of course, being the idiot that I am, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I started to tell people that I was going to be the first person to run across the Sahara. A year and a half later, I'm on the coast of Senegal with a team of people and surrounded by cameras. And that guy who blurted out the terrible idea in the Amazon jungle, he's sitting right next to me because I made him come do this thing with me. And the 3 runners, me, Kevin, and Ray, are all there at the coast of Senegal the day before this expedition begins. And I like to say all the time that addicts are the best salespeople. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I have suckered all of these people into coming to the Sahara Desert, and we are all going to die. Like, everybody thought I knew what I was doing. And that's because I told them I know what I'm doing. And it really was terrifying. And a week later, it's 130 degree ground temperatures every single day. We've run out of food. We've run out of water. We're caught in sandstorms. My 2 teammates are on IV drips every single day because they're so dehydrated. We're not covering enough ground. And after 7 days, it looks like the plug is going to be pulled on this expedition. Like, I get a call from Hollywood and they're saying like, hey, you've done your best, and I'm literally going, I can't hear you. You're breaking up. And I took the battery out of the sat phone and I put it deep in my duffel bag, and I didn't look at it again for a week. And what I recognized was in that moment, I think this happens to a lot of people, I was so attached to the outcome. And the outcome was getting to the other side of the Sahara Desert. That's all I could see. The lessons that I had learned in recovery, the one that we all know, which is 1 day at a time, do what's in front of you, I had completely tossed that out the window. That's what I gave thanks for. Slowly but surely, we made our way across the Sahara Desert, and 111 days later, I put my feet in the Red Sea, and we had run 2 marathons every day for 111 consecutive days without taking a day off. The primary reason we didn't take a day off was we were way over budget on our production schedule. And that's no lie. And it was this really crazy experience, though. And I'll never forget being finished with that and expecting to be relieved and happy. And all I could think was, this might be the saddest day of my life. Like, it was that example of something coming to an end. It had been a 2-year journey to get to the other side of the Sahara. And when it was over was the recognition that I could never go back and relive those days. One of the things I learned during those years of like running every single day is that I could control my personal suffering. And what I mean by that is I could tap into physical pain really quickly. Like, there's kind of nothing out there better than running to tap into that physical pain. So it was my greatest lesson of it's the journey, not the destination. I come home to my condo complex one day and I get out of my car and 6 armed federal agents come out of the coffee shop in my building running towards me, and they arrest me. And they put me in the back of a police car. And I don't know why. And I spend the night in jail, and the next morning I'm handed a big stack of papers, and it's a federal indictment. And ultimately, I become the first and only person in the United States in 2010 to be charged with overstating my income on a home loan application. And I thought it was a joke, actually. And the sort of the lesson embedded in that part of it is I had just enough notoriety from my expedition and other things to be interesting, but I didn't have nearly enough money to defend myself. And this was 2010. So this was at a time after the big mortgage crisis that took place all over the US and certainly all over the world that, you know, I think the government was looking for people to blame, and I was a pretty good target. And ultimately, this sounds crazy, but it might have been the greatest favor ever done to me in my life. I lost everything right away. The day after I was arrested, not anything else, just arrested, I lost all my speaking gigs. I lost the board seat on my own nonprofit. I lost every sponsor. Anybody who thought I was an asshole, basically it gave them carte blanche to confirm that I was an asshole, because surely that had to be the case. And it was a very difficult time for me. And I went to trial, and nobody goes to trial against the feds because you're going to lose. And I'm found not guilty of providing false information on a loan application, because I didn't. My mortgage broker had filled out a loan application in my name and forged my name, and this all came out at trial. But I'm convicted of mail fraud because I signed a closing package that included the fraudulent loan application. And when I signed the closing package, I now owned it. It became mine. And I was sentenced to 21 months in federal prison in Beckley, West Virginia. And I like to talk about this idea of attraction over promotion. I certainly didn't go to other inmates and say, you know, hey, you look like you could lose a few pounds. Why don't you come run with me? That would have been a terrible strategy. And instead, people started coming up to me and asking me if I could like teach them how to run, if I could help them with a running program. And when I arrived at Beckley, there were maybe 2 other runners out of 500 guys. And by the time I left a year and a half later, I had a running group of 18 guys running with me every single day. My overall group was about 50 men, and we were doing yoga on the softball field 3 days a week. Really early in my life, way before I got sober, I met a girl. And of course, it all starts with a girl, because that's where many things start. And she was the first person I ever knew that actually thought nutrition could help you as an athlete. She had been a gymnast in college, and she bought me this book called Eat to Win. So I'm living in Carmel, California, drinking my ass off and doing too much coke, but very concerned about nutrition, which is a very odd thing. But it was the beginning of this process of looking at nutrition and how it could actually help me. And back then, I certainly, what I did was cut out fat, and I got really big into just monitoring, muscle mass and all of that. Flash forward many years, I'm sober, and I just decided that this is about 25 years ago now, so I was 7 or 8 years sober, and I just decided that I wanted to see if I ate as a vegan for a while, what would happen. Just what would happen. I just wanted to see. And, I probably was coincidental, but the first marathon that I ran after I became vegan, I knocked almost 10 minutes off of my personal best. So about 7 or 8 years into my sobriety, I was running and adventuring and eating the same way I'd always eaten growing up in North Carolina. It was a lot of meat. I had some thoughts around a healthy diet, but I just decided I wanted to see what it would feel like to eat as a vegan for a little while. I don't even think I knew the word, actually. I just stopped eating meat, basically. But the first thing I cut out was dairy. And I just said, I want to see how this treats me for even 30 days. And it just so happened that about 30 days after I cut out dairy and stopped eating meat, I had a marathon. And I ended up setting a PR in that marathon by about 10 minutes. And I was already pretty fast at that point. So 10 minutes was a big change. And I just decided I wanted to see where that was going to take me. And there is, for me, just so I'm clear, there's an ethical piece too. Like, I just never really enjoyed meat. I grew up in the South, so I ate, like all kids, I ate what was served in my house. I mean, that's how I ate. And having the freedom to be able to make this choice allowed me a lot of leeway. And that was about 25 years ago, and I've been vegan ever since. When I was locked up, I was writing every day. I was journaling every single day of my life. And that was a gift, actually, of having a lot of free time. And one of the things that I just wrote on a piece of paper one day was, this is like a journey from low places and high points. And that's actually everybody's journey through life, is this never ending roller coaster of difficulties and then great things. And I was like, what if I put a literal spin on the metaphor of low places and high points? And I went to the library in prison and I got out an atlas, and I was like, the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth and Mount Everest is the highest point on Earth. How do I go from here to here? And that's where the idea of going from the Dead Sea to the top of Everest came from. On January 1st, 2027, I'm going to start at the shore of the Dead Sea in Jordan, and I'm going to swim out into the Dead Sea, and I'm going to do a free dive to and I'm not a free diver, to the lowest place I can reach, and then I'm going to come back up, I hope. Otherwise, it's like the world's shortest expedition. When I reach the shore again, I'm going to start running, and I'm going to run all the way across Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Oman. And when I get to the tip of Oman, I'm going to sail across the Indian Ocean. I also don't know how to sail, so there's a little problem there. When I get to Mumbai, India, I'm going to get on my mountain bike and bike all the way across India to Western Nepal. And when I get to Western Nepal, I'll make my way towards Everest Base Camp. And once I reach Base Camp, it's only like 2 miles from there. Just happens to be kind of steep. So it'll be a lowest place on the planet to the highest point on the planet in about 4.5 months. If you enjoyed this, please share it with somebody else, whether it's about running or addiction or prison or just doing hard things on purpose. I'm sure you know somebody that could benefit from this, so please share.